PDC. Item 1 on the agenda, apologies for absence. Has anyone got any apologies?
I have not any, Chairman.
None. Okay, we've got item 2, disclosures of personal and prejudicial interests. Anyone? If not, item 3, the minutes of the previous meeting. Have they been circulated? Members happy with those minutes?
Move, Chair.
Yeah, happy.
Everyone agreed?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't see everyone's hands and everyone, so you know, if I don't respond to you, shout at me and I'll know then, because you know it's I can't see everyone on the screen. Which brings us to the main item of business this afternoon, which is the work plan for the next for the 2021, for what remains of 2021. And is Helen with us?
Yes.
Yes.
You are with us, Helen.
Yes, Chair.
We've been looking at this within education, and one of the major issues, obviously, that's coming up is how we respond as an education service, how we support our schools to respond to the COVID crisis, the changed circumstances that are being imposed on us by COVID, and the different ways that schools are going to have to operate. Because we can assume there will be periodic disruptions, but also that it's a way of using technology, I think, to make a virtue out of a necessity, that this becomes a different way of working, a different way of supporting children that can complement their education moving forward. So it's both a way of responding and a way of working differently in future. So Helen, can I ask you to sort of outline where we are with responding to the different way we have to work now, and the implications that has for in terms of things like blended learning. So it's over to you, Helen.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, in terms of our recovery in education, there have been two key strands, one of which has been our continuity of learning. How do we use our continuity of learning plan really to support the different changes? And obviously we've encountered different phases of challenge because of COVID, but we've also seen COVID as an opportunity to work in different ways on a sustainable footing. So I think we need to recognise that since the main lockdown in March, we've developed different ways of blended learning, remote learning, distance learning, synchronous learning, asynchronous learning. We've had to develop a lot of new tricks in a short space of time. And obviously, our aim here in Swansea is to develop consistency and quality of that offer to all children on an equitable basis. And with that in mind, we have to consider very carefully that we do not exclude any learners who may not have devices or connectivity in their home. So we still have a lot of work to do because we are planning and evolving as we speak. So we are sharing our good practice currently, and we are reporting to Welsh Government and to our regulators on what those plans are. But clearly this is a fertile ground really in terms of policy development, that we need to develop some consistency around what we do here in Swansea. And further to that, we've had some early feedback. You may have heard that our schools here in Swansea have been engaged with our regulator in education, Estyn. So we've had some early feedback around Estyn telling us what the main themes are and what the best practice is. So I think we've got a lot to celebrate, but we shouldn't be resting on our laurels. We need to develop the work in terms of digital learning together. And the other strand I mentioned right at the beginning was, of course, the operational plans in terms of the safe return to education. And I think those plans have matured well. So in terms of our recovery, I think that the work there is done. We had a very specific task and finish group, and that group has met consistently throughout the crisis and will have their final meeting on the 3rd of December. But certainly that return to education in terms of safe operations, we've got a lot to celebrate. We've been inspected by the Health and Safety Executive recently, and our schools have been commended, and indeed some peer review around the work of our schools, our practice in Swansea will be shared further afield in terms of our safe operations in schools. So that is good news, but
Yeah.
certainly a lot of work to do with our blended learning.
Thank you, Helen. And can I ask people, if you're not speaking, turn your mics off? I think there's some feedback coming through. But yes, and as Helen said, and I pay tribute to the work of the Return to School Task and Finish group. You know, the involvement of people there and the level of detail that they were involved with, it was really spectacular. And I know the hard work that went in, both in the meetings and in between in actioning the what was agreed. But I think, as Helen has said again, it's about consistency. We know that there's good practice. We know there's innovative practice across Swansea schools. And from my standpoint, what we need to do is to achieve consistency across all schools so that practice is shared. We've got all our schools learning from each other and working out ways of responding to learners' needs. Who wants to come in first on this? I know there's quite a few of you who've been discussing this with me in the past. Jen, do you want to come in at this point?
Thank you. Yes, as Helen said, in a very short time, we've had to make some very rapid progress. I still think we need to look in more detail at the actual kit that is out there and being used by our pupils. I noted in a very early survey by one of our secondary schools, who's got what, a number of families seem to consider that a small mobile phone was sufficient. Well, clearly for working on big school projects, that's not. And also looking forward, I know there's a lot of talk at the moment about inoculations, but I think we're going to be using blended learning in some form or another for a considerable number of months, and I think there are benefits that we can learn from it. I know when austerity first started to cut in Swansea and numbers of teaching staff and support staff was an issue, one of the areas that was considered that time is sharing staff across schools, especially in difficult subjects that are difficult to find teachers, such as the sciences and maths. So yeah, I think we've made huge progress. COVID has been an amazing accelerator, but I think it's time now to have a major review and consider how we can share best practice and plan for the future. So we're happy to support this project of blended learning. It's a strange phrase. I'm not sure every child or family understands what it means any more than synchronous and asynchronous learning, etc. It's a whole new world of learning and language and techniques and disciplines, because a lot of families want a nice timetable where every live class is delivered without thinking what the implications for who that teacher has got to teach in the rest of the class. And is that actually what works best for pupils? And that's one of the areas I think we really need to look at, what works best for our pupils.
Thank you, Jen. And I think it opens up various avenues. I think obviously one of the first issues is the nitty-gritty of connectivity, hardware. Have learners got access to the machines they need? Have they got access to the internet and so on to be able to use it in the first place? We've also got the question of what kind of materials, what approaches do we use? What materials are put online? Is it live streaming? Is it recorded lessons? How does it work with the teaching and learning materials online? And we can use existing systems. I know that schools have been doing some of this for a long time, and it's building on existing practice there. Also see, well, what do we need to do to bring our teachers up to scratch and make sure that they've got the wherewithal to work in what is quite often a different way to what they were trained to do. And they've been forced into this now, and I know a lot of them have responded very well, very quickly. But there's obviously ongoing professional development needs there. So I think, and there's also the need to capture what learners think. You know, what are their views of this? What do they find most user friendly? We may find that they come up with ideas and suggestions that we hadn't thought of. So I think that it's important that we capture the learner voice as part of this. So I think broadly, those are the themes that sort of come to me thinking around this subject. So enough for me. Can I open it up to the floor? Lyndon.
Thanks, Chair. I think to reiterate what Jen said, you know, our teachers have, and head teachers and staff and Helen's department have done a cracking job, you know, throughout this time, and you know, they've been on everybody, including us, using this, been on a massive learning curve, and there's still more to do. But as Chair of Education and Scrutiny, I did take the opportunity to write out to Helen and asked her to pass on everybody's best wishes and thanks to the two teachers throughout Swansea, teachers and in fact Helen's staff. So that I know has happened. I think one of the things we need to worry about is that we must make sure that nobody's left behind. Now, some parents are going to be really keen and be pushing their children to make sure that everything happens and everything works for them. But there are going to be others who don't take that much of an interest. And therefore, those are the children we need to be absolutely make sure that, you know, we're looking after them and they've got the proper access to equipment, computer equipment, so that they can take the lessons, not, as Jen said, from an iPhone, but actually from something that's worthwhile, because that will, you know, determine on the quality of the work that they're going to get through as well. So those are my main sort of concerns.
Absolutely, and I think that raises a question as well, Lyndon, about what systems the schools have, the pastoral systems, to ensure that they are able to support and monitor that very issue. I've got Des and then John. I think they want to speak.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's similar to what Lyndon has just mentioned. Whilst it's obvious that some families with a number of children across the range of education are struggling with limited facilities. For example, one iPad between 4 or 5 children, which is very, very difficult, obviously. The other thing that's startling, which has been in the news this week, is the regression of pupils due to the to the lockdowns. You know, children now coming back into school and they need to be and not be trained again and can't use a knife and fork. It's really concerning, isn't it? You know, the effect this is having, especially on children from the poorer backgrounds and parents who cannot cope for a variety of reasons. I think we need to be thinking what we can do to help them and try to even it out. And of course, the fact now that the exams next year are going to be changed again, we're not going to have examinations as such. That's going to put a lot of pressure back on schools, isn't it? And a lot of pressure on staff. So there's a whole host of things that I think we should be thinking of as policy development committee, you know, to assist the department and indeed the cabinet member.
John, and then I'll call Mike Lewis.
Thanks, Rob. Des has hit on part of what I was going to say, because I am concerned where there's 3 or 4 children in the family and there's only one piece of equipment. As you know, Penrowell is quite a deprived area for the families there. But I must say, as being a governor of that school, how well they've adapted to everything that's going on. And my congratulations go to the way that they've dealt with everything there. It's amazing when you go up there and see the way the children have adapted, how the teachers have adapted, and the way they've made space for everything there. So when you go there, you feel quite safe and quite welcomed. So I think that needs to be passed on, Helen, to the staff, not of ours, or just of my school, but of every school, how they've had to adapt to things and have to learn a different way of dealing with everything, and come out of it with not many complaints, to be honest. I think they've all taken it on board. So that's all I want to say, Rob. But my concern is that the children have got the right equipment to be able to learn, you know, and learn safely. Thank you, Rob.
Mike?
Thank you, Rob.
You're on mute, by the way.
Yeah, you just come off now, sorry. Slow finger. Yes, I understand that our education department rolled out a lot of equipment to children who didn't have that equipment last year. My biggest concern is no matter how much equipment you're going to roll out, you still need internet connectivity to use that equipment. Are we looking at that avenue and make sure that, or is there some way of us, as well as rolling out this equipment, is there some way we can contribute to getting internet connectivity for the people who can't afford it? Thank you.
Helen, you want to come in?
Yeah, just to respond firstly to Councillor Lewis and to Councillor Curtis. I'll respond to Councillor Lewis first. In terms of the approaches to looking at digital exclusion, we do consider the connectivity devices as well as part of the offer of kit. We have been offering MiFi connectivity devices. So we are looking at that in tandem really with the issuing of any laptops or tablets that we may have. So that is part and parcel of that. And then in terms of Councillor Curtis, I'm hoping that as a governor you will receive the newsletter from the Education Department. Once again today our newsletter congratulates and thanks our school staff for the safe return to education. We've consistently provided our school staff with praise and thanks for working in these really tough, challenging and highly pressurised situations. So it's really important that we continue to do that, and I'm grateful for you for highlighting that. And the other point I wanted to make was that in terms of sharing our best practice between schools, it would be remiss of us just to contain that within schools, because we have other strategic partners in education across our city. We've got the universities as well. We've got Gower College. So we've got a real opportunity to look at best practice, not just in schools, but with other organisations within Swansea.
Thank you. Yeah.
Jen, I'll call you in.
Thank you. There's one area I think we should not ignore. We tend to think of blended learning as immediately moving into a digital provision. But what I have been struck with, especially from the primary sector, is the high quality hard copies of work that have been shared with families and pupils, and the feedback we've had from some of the special schools about how their pupils actually like something tangible, hard that they can work with. It's all part of blended learning in that you can do it part in school, part at home. But as important digital is, I think we do have to acknowledge that there are cases where schools, best practice, well informed about their student body, have decided that on this subject they would do not so much digital, or a mixture of digital and traditional hard copy on paper. So just putting that in the mix so it doesn't get lost. But certainly equipment, connectivity, and how we use that effectively and share the best experiences and put training in places is really important looking forward. And again, we're always up against the clock on this.
Helen?
Yeah, just to add really in terms of when we have a framework for how we think about blended learning, it's not just about providing a digital device, but it's ensuring the high quality learning experience. And that does include effective feedback. So if that's missing, the learning experience is not as good. So we need to build in, when we look at effective and best practice in Swansea, how our children and young people are receiving feedback about their work. That's absolutely crucial in order to move them forward. So I think we need to include that when we consider best practice.
Are there any other comments before we move on to working out the next steps and what we need to do as a committee to address these issues? Mike?
Yeah, just a thought. I don't know if it's already been discussed by Helen and the team, but what we're doing now, we're having a virtual conference basically, which is very similar to a small class, isn't it? And Helen was just alluding to the fact that the pupils need feedback to see that they're doing the work. Couldn't there be a virtual class then? I don't know how many people can get onto these meetings, but and whether the technology would stretch to a full class of people. But I can't see this pandemic going away anywhere soon, even though it's being mooted in the press that they've got the answer with this new vaccine. I still think it is going to hang around at least until the middle of next year, if we're lucky. So it's just a thought. I don't know whether Helen can come in and come back to me on that, whether there is sort of a room for a Teams classroom, basically. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Yeah, when we hear in future committee meetings about the best practice, and when we collect that in Swansea, we will hear examples of teachers who are self-isolating, who have been able to deliver a classroom-based kind of learning activity where the children are still in school and the teachers at home self-isolating, and the class has been supervised, but essentially the teacher is seeing 30, 24, whatever, 30 faces on screen. So we've got some real good examples of how people have adapted really well. And it's those adaptations and possibilities and opportunities that need to be shared.
It goes back to the time, I think, with some of the school federations and small schools, they started to make use of that a long time before this came, and for very different reasons. You'd have a teacher delivering a lesson, and then there'd be another class in another building following the same lesson, supervised by another member of staff. And I think they were kind of there was emerging practice from what I saw, but it's something that's can be built on as this moves on. So in terms of moving this, Linda, sorry, I'll call you in first.
Yeah, following on from what Mike said, I support that, and I think it does give us that sort of, if one thing, when children or pupils are at home, they're on their own, and all of a sudden they'll be part of a team, part of their class really on screen, and that I think will help build their morale up as well. And also, whoever's on as well, like you were looking over all us, that can be the same thing. But I think it will certainly have benefits.
So where do we start, Helen? I suppose is the first question. And I mean, is there a possibility of you bringing to the next committee meeting an overview of, what the lessons are from the last, say, 6 months? Do we have that evidence, and where does that take us, really?
Well, I can see, Chair, that you've noted 4 key aspects there in terms of the access, the approaches in terms of best practice, the professional learning offer, and the learner views. So we do have some material already in place that we could provide the committee with an overview easily. And today's newsletter to our colleagues in schools actually invites schools to issue a new questionnaire to parents, because we're asking really about their opinions, their views, what it's like in terms of their experience of how this is going. So we do have some existing work that's in the pipeline, but certainly we can draw that together to provide an overview of all of the aspects that you've outlined, Chair.
I think that needs to be the first stage. I mean, ideally, we'd invite some of the schools in to talk to us. Now, to be honest with you, much as I want to do that, I'm loath to do it now because I'm aware of the pressures that the schools are under. You know, all our staff are working over and above. As Jan described and other people have described, we know that the effort that's gone in to turning things around in schools. So I think if we can avoid that, at least for the next 2 or 3 months, I think it's something we need to do. So that would be you as officers collating information from schools. Is that right, Helen?
Yes, we have 3 key officers leading on this piece of work. So in terms of continuity of learning, we have Rob Davis as head of the secondary phase team. We have Chris Rees, who is our digital in education officer. And the 3rd officer is Damien Beach, who is our head of primary phase team. So those 3 officers would be appropriate officers to invite to provide an overview to you next time we meet.
So that would be the December committee meeting. And is that feasible? Are they be able to come to collate the information by December?
Yes, certainly. Obviously, we're currently working on this. It's not anything new, but providing a collation of information is easily done within a month. Yeah.
Are members happy to proceed on that basis?
Yes, yeah.
Anyone else? Okay.
Yes,
Any
yeah.
other issue any member wants to bring up at this point? If not, I'm not aware of any other matters to be discussed this afternoon. So can I thank everyone for their attendance and contributions? You know, I think we've identified an important piece of work, which, as I said, it's not just about responding to the immediate situation, but it's going to help us to develop and take things forward in the longer term as well. So I think it is an important piece of work, and we look forward to having the kind of to set the baseline at the next meeting, and we'll be able to identify then, you know, what some of the priorities are moving forward in discussion from that evidence. So can I thank you all for your attendance, and I hope none of you have to go out in this rain, but there we are. It's bucketing down.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Rob.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Chair.
Rob.
Thanks,
Bye.
Rob.
Thanks, Rob.